Conservative Party members have voted, and 50% of them do not want Kemi Badenoch to lead the party in the next general election. She sold her soul, and yet they still do not want her. Candice Owens has been denied an Australian visa by the country's highest court. The court ruled that the Conservative Speaker failed a character test to enter into Australia. They have also cited that her history of extremist and inflammatory comments targeting Muslims, Black people and Jewish people and the LGBTQIA plus communities could increase community tensions and potentially incite hostility or violence. And soft skills are making a comeback as being one of the leading reasons why you will be successful in your career. Hey everyone, I'm Toya Washington, and you have stepped into the Toya Talks podcast.
Toya Talks. Council estate to corporate space. First gen Nigerian setting the pace. From Goldman Sachs to PwC. Building legacies for all to see. This lecture couldn't stop this flow. Law degree, just watch me grow. Masters of the game we show. Every sister how to own their throne. TOIA, let me show you how to navigate and elevate, that's what we do. Black Queen, energy growing.
Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Toya Talks podcast. I'm really excited today to deliver this episode just because there's so many different topics I want to talk about, and I'm hoping that we get through all of them. But the last week has been crazy. There has been a cosmic shift, and honestly, I have felt it. There has been just a roller coaster of emotions. But when I say roller coaster, it hasn't been a bad thing. It's just, as a Libran and being in Libra season, further perpetuates the reason why we're the scales in the zodiac, and we require balance. Generally, Librans like balance, and even if the scales are tipped slightly, that slight is massive. And I'm definitely feeling that. You all know I'm very spiritual, and I'm very into kind of like tarot and spirituality, star signs. I really, for me, I take it back to spirituality in Africa before colonization and the erasure of Black history, specifically African history. And for me, I take my spirituality very seriously. So the last week has been tumultuous. But my dad always used to say, when something great is about to happen in someone's life, there is almost like a shift that happens, and it's almost like you're being pulled in different directions, and even the devil wants to have a swipe. So I definitely know something great is about to happen, or great things are about to happen, but damn. And my ADHD has been, it's just been a very mad, okay? So yeah, I'm kind of dealing with all that. And then I am literally within days about to launch my new company called Sister Scribble, which is a stationery company, but reimagined stationery, like stationery to encourage us to really lean into our creativity, enjoy the art of creating. But all that information will be on the website when it launches, literally within a matter of days. So make sure you follow on Instagram. Sister Scribble, SISTAH, Scribble, SCRIBBLE. So Sister Scribble, all one word, on social media. And those of you who have already signed up to be the first to know that the website has launched, you literally go on www.sisterscribble.com, put in your email address, and once the website launches, you'll receive an email. I will say whatever day is announced, the time would be midday in which it would launch, and it's literally within days away. I just need to focus. I've got a couple of things I need to do for the website, and once they're done, I'll be good to go. So I'm very excited. So you heard the opener of the podcast. You're probably thinking, what Conservative members, what vote, when did this happen? So within actual parties within the UK, they do run polls, and it's basically to see if the party actually support their leader. It's sense checking that if we were to go into a general election, that everybody in the party will support who that leader is. And bear in mind that the leader of the Conservative Party have been also voted by their Conservative peers. I've said this previously on the podcast before. I was not surprised to hear this because I've told you all that Kemi Badenoch will never, ever be in a situation where she has the Conservative Party vote to lead in the next election and potentially be the Prime Minister of the UK. The UK is not ready for a black woman to lead. I'm sorry, but it's the truth. The closest they are to for a person of colour to lead was Rishi Sunak. And let's be very real. He was not elected in the way everybody else was. It was by default. That's how he got that position. Liz Truss paved the way for him. He was not the first choice. When they went up against each other, when they went up against each other in the in-party elections, the party chose Liz Truss. They did not choose Rishi Sunak. So I definitely think it's very telling that although they're very different parties, the Conservatives and the Labour Party, albeit the way the Labour Party operates these days, it is literally Conservatives in suits. But the point is, I think this goes to show how really far behind the UK is in pushing through diversity in what we understand it to be. The UK is just not ready for a black woman to lead it. And I think until this country gets to a space where we accept that, number one, that racism exists, because remember, Rishi Sunak up until recently did not agree that it was alive and kicking here in the UK. And number two, until we're really honest about the disparity in the way we're treated from a pay perspective, and there are so many issues that sit in beneath that. And until we are really ready to have honest and frank conversation, I don't ever see a black person, less so a black woman, leading as Prime Minister here in the UK. And I don't think I'm going to see it in my generation, to be honest. I don't. Unfortunately for us to see this and witness this, Kemi Badenoch has sold her soul. And I don't think there's any issue that she's married and she's, happily, has kids and married to a white man. I don't think there's an issue. But I think the issue is where she operates from a space whereby it comes across as though she resents being a black woman. She's very, very honest about how she feels. And I say honest because this is her truth. And the things that she has shared and the things that she has said, it doesn't lead one to believe that she is very proud of herself. She's near enough denounced being Nigerian. And she operates like, there was this video where she was singing Sweet Caroline, and it was just so uncomfortable to watch. First of all, I was looking at the corners of her lips because I wanted to know where are we in this, like which part of the day are we at? Is your lunch and your breakfast in the corner of your lips? Like, where are we? And ever since I've seen that dirt on the corner of her lips, I now know for a fact her breath stinks. You can't have that on the corner of your lips and your breath not stinking. But the thing is, the things that she spews comes from within. So I feel like her gut health is probably not good either. But that's just my view. But Kemi Badenoch, to me, will always, like, every time she speaks, I just shake my head. And don't get me wrong, I'm not sitting here saying that, she should fully advocate for black women. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. But to almost denounce and to almost reduce your existence and reduce yourself so that you can be accepted by a community that sees you as a black woman, even if you do not, is actually really, really sad. And the example it sets to others is of self-hate, because that's how it comes across. Kemi Badenoch is trying her hardest to assimilate, but we can all see her. And she can see herself, and she looks stupid. And I just wonder, like, does she not have friends around her? Like, what? But then I think, if all her friends are white, are they or she has friends who are like her, who are black, but are they really operating in their blackness? Then is it any wonder that she kind of behaves the way she does? It's uncomfortable. And I don't know, do we all know somebody who's a little bit like Kemi Badenoch? I did. I went to school with someone who's very similar to her. And back then I just thought, she just has a chip on her shoulder. But actually that chip was self-hate. And any time I would try to like bond with this person over the the fact that we were both Nigerians, the way she would distance herself from being Nigerian, down to her explaining to me she does not have a Nigerian passport. And I was like, well, you don't need a Nigerian passport to be Nigerian. It kind of has something to do with your lineage, something to do with your parents, darling. At least both of your parents are Nigerian. You know, it was very odd. And even like how this old school friend of mine, well, I say school friend, this school acquaintance, because let's really be real, that's no friend of mine. As she's gone on and led her life, it gives me Kemi Badenoch vibes. Do you know what I mean? And this is not me like talking down on Kemi Badenoch. This is me just being really honest. As a black woman, I don't see her as somebody who is, definitely she's not an ally, but I don't see her like, you know, like when you see a black woman, you're like, oh, a black woman, I know you've been through a lot. I look at her as somebody who self-hates so much that to call her black, she may be offended. You know what I mean? So I don't know what to say on her, but please, if you are, you know, just give Kemi Badenoch a tissue and just tell her to be checking the corners of her lips. Buy a pocket mirror, be checking, and to sort out that gut health so that the breath will not smell in accordance to the things in the corner of her lips. God forgive me. France, there's a lot going on. Listen, I talk about this cosmic shift that's happened in the world, but I don't know what it is. Like, it definitely feels like there's a political changing climate. We're seeing here in the UK, for example, the monarchy, who I do not support, do not agree with. I don't advocate for the monarchy. I think the monarchy is antiquated and I don't understand why we have a monarchy, but that's a podcast episode for another day. But the whole Epstein case will never die. And I'm so grateful that it never will die, because I feel like the press would rather it did, because a lot of the press are kind of monarchy apologists. Let's really be real. But in saying that, a lot of people who are central to this Epstein case have died in mysterious circumstances. And that is not me being a conspiracy theorist. That's me questioning, why is it when there's something big where we need witnesses, either they commit suicide or like they die of natural causes, natural inverted commas. It's just given very weird. Anyway, the former Duke of York, which is Prince Andrew, has basically had his title stripped from him. And it is an unprecedented move, but it is a move that is not only very welcome, but it speaks to the whole monarchy climate here in the UK. And I just want people to know, especially if you're overseas, they don't have as much support as they once did, the monarchy, because the monarchy has not only just changed, but I think with what's happened with the case of Epstein has shone a really bright light on the goings on in the monarchy, albeit Prince Andrew, and how title and entitlement and elitism has basically allowed Prince Andrew to, well, I say Prince Andrew, to operate in the way it has been alleged that he has. And I think the monarchy have had no choice but to basically renounce his dukedism, if that's a word, because the climate is changing and the tide is turning. And the monarchy understand that in order for them to at least get in front of what is happening, they need to be seen to be condemning Prince Andrew, their Prince Andrew. And in doing so, stripping him and basically almost like they've stripped him and said, you will wear what you were born with, i.e. you can keep your prince because you were born a prince, but everything else that you were not born with, we are taking from you. But the monarchy has a very interesting and very colourful history. So when we talk about the allegations against Prince Andrew, we do have to question some of the choices that the monarchy have made. Like, for example, how old was Princess Diana when she met the current reigning king of England, who is Prince Charles? Or sorry, he's not Prince anymore, he's King Charles, isn't he? How old? There are so many rumours swirling around about alleged affairs. Well, the current king, Charles, he's one alleged. He self-admits that he had an affair with Camilla, who is now queen. It is just a fucking mess. And yet we pay so much in taxes for a monarchy that we haven't asked for. And I actually think that if it was to go to a vote, I don't think As patriotic as this country behaves with their England flags, I don't actually think they would vote in support of having a monarchy. I don't see it, because I think the question will be asked, how does it benefit us? What does having a monarchy do? And to be quite honest, for me, the monarchy symbolizes colonialism, and it symbolizes the pillaging and the oppression of Africa. That's what the monarchy symbolizes to me. I would love to know what the monarchy symbolizes to you. So wherever you listen to this podcast, can you please tell me? Because I know you guys can leave comments on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, and most podcast platforms. But can you please tell me, what does the monarchy mean to you? Because listen, I want to hear. Because maybe I just read too much, and therefore I'm definitely like, when it comes to culture, when it comes to understanding of my lineage and my heritage, I really do understand. And I do understand the role of the British Empire. So for me, it's incompatible with my beliefs, the monarchy. It's completely incompatible. But maybe there's somebody who is more of a monarchy apologist. So I want to hear from you. I'm open. I always want to learn, but not learn because I'm not taking any of it in. But I always want to know what people think outside of my own self, because I would love to then question, where do these beliefs come from, and actually understand how you feel you're benefiting, because you ain't going to be knighted. You're not going to be invited to Buckingham Palace, and you're sure as hell ain't going to eat no crumpets with them. So I want to know what the monarchy means to you. So I went off slightly on a tangent, but I was talking about France. France is historically a very problematic country. So for me, I definitely believe they've sown the seeds of karma historically. And as time is progressing, they are reaping what they have sown. If you understand how the British Empire operated with its allies, and the things that its allies, if you like, because of allies, France would be considered one of the Britain's allies, and the role they've played in the subjugation of Africa. I don't even want to get into it, because there was a particular thing that happened with France, and I just cannot. I hate even thinking about it. But anyway, so the former Prime Minister of France, Nicolas Sarkozy, I remember when he was presiding over France, because I always used to remember, they always used to call him Sarkozy. So it's just a name that I would remember. But basically, today he started his 5-year sentence for criminal conspiracy for his role in 2007. During his presidential campaign, taking money and his campaign being financed by Libya under the rule of Colonel Gaddafi in exchange for diplomatic favours. And Sarkozy has claimed his innocence throughout, the investigation and the trial, but he was sentenced to 5 years. And that's kind of a big thing. If you imagine such an influential country, an influential prime minister that Sarkozy was, he's now been sentenced to 5 years in prison. He is going to serve time for conspiracy. They'll have you believe that Africa, oh my God, they're so corrupt. But let me tell you, if there are countries that are corrupt, if not equal to or more than, we need to be looking at Europe, because a lot of these countries taught Africa what they know, as far as I'm concerned. Now, in order to sentence a former prime minister of France, the evidence must have been overwhelming. But what evidence is actually missing is the testimony of Colonel Gaddafi, because he's dead. And we all know how he came to meet his end. And we all know the role, allegedly, that France played. So it's interesting, because then it throws up other questions. How many other countries, or how many other former presidents, and how many other presidential elections internationally were financed by Libya? That's a big question, isn't it? That's a question that they won't teach in your history lessons. That's a big question, because I fail to see how it could only ever be France and Sarkozy's presidential election campaign that was financed by Libya. But the question is, it was and allegedly, what's alleged, whatever, it was financed. But then Why was Libya's money good enough then? What was going on in 2007? What other people were taking money from Libya? So many questions, not enough answers. Steph London, yeah, we're moving on. Steph London has launched her beauty line called Don. Is it called Don Beauty? She's launched her perfume, and honestly, I'm going to say this because it's just like, I really rate Steph London in terms of her talent. She's a very, 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 very talented woman. She's very talented. Honestly, like, you know me, I'm going to give it to you straight. But I just don't understand her marketing. I don't understand I just don't get it. Do you know what I mean? Short of the whole relationship with Burna Boy, I don't know. And this now beauty line just looks cheap, cheaply done, cheap campaign. And for everything I've seen, she has money. So she could have really had a team and everything. And I don't think she should have gone down the beauty route. Personally, I don't look at her and think, oh, I want to know what you're wearing, what perfume you're wearing. No, it's boring. I think maybe, I don't know, maybe yes, I get it. Everyone needs a side hustle, but I don't think that's the hill that she wants to spray her perfume on, honestly. Also, let's jump back to France. Sorry, I'm jumping, but that's my ADHD brain. Also, we have a dilemma as well, you know. I had a couple, but there's one in particular that I'm bringing to the podcast, and we're going to get into that, obviously. Anonymity will be protected. But did you know that they had royal jewels at the Louvre in France? Now, the Louvre is like a tourist attraction. It's like a thing, okay? Whatever. And basically, these robbers, apparently there was 4 of them, broke into the Louvre and within 7 minutes stole some royal jewels. And now there is a manhunting, because there's 4 of them. And the French authorities are they are day and night to track this down. And I'm really interested in this because I want to know. I don't understand who's stolen these royal jewels. What are you going to do with them? Because no one's going to buy them. Everybody knows they're stolen. No one wants to be charged with handling stolen goods. Hello? So I don't understand this. What's the plan? So unless they get captured, we're not really going to know. I've got so many questions. I find stuff like this interesting. Also as well, I love Lupin. Yeah, I've gone there. Yeah. Lupin on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, you need to get to watch it. It's a series. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's basically about a guy. He's a black man. I can't remember his real name, but he's absolutely gorgeous. And he basically is a thief. And he kind of steals from these really difficult places. And, you know, there's a basic storyline behind it all. But Lupin the character is based on a book and how elusive this thief is and how he can get in and out and kind of mask himself to steal all these things. And it's actually brilliantly written, brilliantly acted. And honestly, when I think about the theft of crown jewels, I do think of Lupin. I'm not going to lie. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and watch Lupin on Netflix. I'm so jealous for those people. I say jealous, but I am a series hoarder. You know, I really watch. So those people who haven't watched Lupin, you're in for a treat because it's actually great viewing. And I definitely find that autumn is a really good season for series. It's just nice. I think as we walk into winter, it's just nice. It's chilled. You want to be at home and be comfy and watch all these programs. So yeah, anyway, Lupin, the Louvre, France, in a mess. Have you heard about this new phrase called the bonfire of the middle managers? Now, I'm going to explain it. So the bonfire of the middle managers is about delayering of middle management in most companies. And it's to remove bureaucratic layers, reducing cost and improve the speed of communication and decision making. We've seen from an economic perspective and tech pressures and the advances in tech, whereby the question of whether you need middle management has been sounding really loudly. So what they've basically said is you cut middle managers and you know that your major spend is people. So already in terms of headcount, you've cut that when you remove the layers of middle. And remember, middle management is not always one layer. Sometimes there are multiple layers of middle management before you get to senior management. And a lot of our organizations, we have that, right? Where you'll have kind of the juniors, and then you'll have the experienced, then you'll have the middle managers, and there may be one or two layers before you even get to senior management. Gartner predicts that by 2026, 20% of all companies will use AI, and they will use that AI to erode middle management. The way they look at it is, if you remove middle management, what happens is you're forced to then delegate authority to those people who are considered junior to middle management. And then you're creating a flatter structure. And that in itself gives you increased autonomy, because you are removing that middle management, assigning more responsibility and accountability to what would be considered junior members of staff, or those who are not middle managers. And then whilst you're increasing autonomy, you're encouraging that entrepreneurial spirit to be able to be innovative and use initiative. Now, this is what I'm going to say. I think middle managers are important if they operate correctly. If they're gatekeeping and become stumbling blocks to progress, that's when it becomes bureaucratic. And that's when you have to consider what the role of middle managers are. So in my organization, I never would have said this before when I first joined, but I will say this now. I think it's very hierarchical. And I think a lot of that stems from misogyny. I think it stems from macroaggressions and the racial tension and undercurrent that you often find in organizations, whereby they're not as transparent about pay gaps and biases. And honestly, don't get me wrong, I think that most organizations, or at least organizations that I've worked in, there has been diversity, but I don't think there's enough to say we are a diverse company, because I think I shared this last week. I very rarely find senior managers of colour, less so Black women. And I definitely think that when I do see them, they're very senior. So when I'm looking at middle managers, a lot of middle managers, especially in my industry, are white men. And that in itself creates a level of tension, because you're dealing with the issues of mobility amongst our community and the ability to kind of be promoted, because a lot of these middle managers are same. So they're not wanting us to kind of join them. They see us as less than. So we're currently kept out of the ability to achieve middle management. But then what does that middle management actually mean? What does it do? And how does a middle manager become a senior manager? And I think where you lack the transparency becomes an issue. I don't think you need multi-layers of middle management. I think you need one layer of middle management, because I think there is an element of, if you have too much access to senior manager or seniors or directors, for example, it takes away from their ability to kind of do what they need to do, whilst we are delegated to do the day to day. But I think that the middle management is about accessibility. And I think it's about how we are able to access and move into those middle manager roles, but it should be one layer. I think when we talk about AI and the advancements of technology, I definitely can see how a multi-layered system of middle management can be eroded into one system through AI. I think there still needs to be that level of accountability. There still needs to be that level of bureaucracy. But I think when bureaucracy becomes complicated, it becomes a problem. Now, I recently had a meeting with someone and I said, listen, I think bureaucracy is important to ensure that you are meeting the corporate strategy and achieving certain corporate objectives. I think it serves as a kind of conscience, if you like, a commercial conscience in my case, to ensure that we are doing the right thing and we are buying, and we are, say for example, you are buying value, you are getting a return on investment for those of us who are in profit-based companies, I think middle managers then make sense there. But I think a lot of us are in organizations where it's multi-layered of that middle manager. So when we talk about the bonfire of middle management, I think it's very welcome. I think it's very important that clarity in terms of mobility into middle management is equally as important as delayering it. I think that when we talk also about bureaucracy, and being gatekeepers, I think we also need to talk about that, the intersectionality of race and gender as part of that discussion, because where the industry I'm in, middle management is mostly white men. So what does that speak to? It speaks to control. It speaks to a negative narrative about how we progress and climb that corporate ladder. Why does the ladder have to be so high? Well, it's because we have multi-layers of middle management. So I think it's part of an ever evolving conversation. But I definitely wanted to introduce that concept to you because when you have multi-layered managers, you have multi-layered obstructions. And I definitely think middle management is important on one level, not on multiple levels. And I think middle managers doesn't have to be more than a certain amount, depending on how big the organization is, the team and division they sit in. So in my division, I think middle management only needs to be 4 people. Because really and truly, why are you a barrier to progress? Like, why? I don't understand the reason. And when I sit back and think about it, I think sometimes we have multi-layers of middle management because I think people have an elevated ego and an inflated self-importance. And it's almost like you have to give them a role for them to justify their existence. So why don't we just make them a gatekeeper. Why don't we just make a middle management? So I definitely think that is something that also you should consider when you are going into a new role or you're going into a new company. I think it's important to say, what does middle management look like in this organization? And given that this role is not a middle management role, can we discuss mobility and what progress and promotion looks like into middle management and what comes after that? How many layers of middle management do we have, and how does it affect the delivery of my role? Yeah, those are the questions I ask. You ain't gonna come to me and think, well, you're just interviewing me. This is two-way, honey. This is a conversation. These are the type of questions I think we need to have evolving conversations. And I think when you start asking those type of questions, you then start to think about whether these companies are actually a mutual fit. Because for a lot of us, it's about progression. And you need to know what the landscape of progression looks like. I think people kind of go into organizations, go into interviews with the idea that I'm just so grateful. I have that gratitude. And it's something that I've discussed previously before, previous episodes, social media. And I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm grateful for opportunities that I have also a hand in creating. So whilst I acknowledge these opportunities, I had a hand in creating them, because had I not, gone to law school and sacrificed my life, literally my social life and any aspect of socializing and picking up extra work as a cleaner, I wouldn't be in a position where I would have achieved my law school qualification and gone to law school and done my LPC. I wouldn't have achieved my master's. There is a level of sacrifice that we have had to endure to be able to be in the positions we are in now. So how do we honor that journey? And I think part of honoring that journey is when you are in conversations, you go into new roles, or you're in interviews, that you ask some really poignant questions, because those questions will tell you, like the question that I've just shared here, what your trajectory looks like, and actually how this organization, how your team is actually structured. How are you then able to deliver your role if it's bureaucratic? And maybe some people are better suited to more entrepreneurial roles or startups. I mean, startups are my worst nightmare. I've been in a startup more than one occasion earlier on in my career, and I vow never to do it because I'm not that invested in a startup. The type of investment you need to be in a startup, I can't give it. That's probably why my iron depleted past a certain level when I was in my 20s, but that's a conversation for another day. But do you understand the point I'm making here? it wasn't enough for me to just come here and talk about the concept of the bonfire of the middle managers. I think it's also important to have the discussion about kind of how you fit into a middle management structure, and how are you proactively in a situation where you are challenging those structures for your own understanding about whether there is a cultural and corporate fit for you. Now, when I say corporate, I know that not everybody is in corporate, but I am going to say this. You may not be in corporate, but you may be part of a corporation. Okay, you are in the working world, and every organization you will work in or work for has a structure. Where do you fit into that structure? How layered is that structure in order for you to do your job? What are the barriers to entry? Who are the gatekeepers? How many are there? Who are the decision makers? How long does it take to get that decision? These are all questions I feel like you need to know. So yeah, I did the research on the bonfire of the middle managers, and actually it's also a topic covered by The Economist as well. So those of you who are interested, I'll put a link in the show notes. But sometimes I'm a part-time geek. I love these type of things that speak to the world of work, because in as much as I talk about pop culture and social economic issues that happen here in the UK and abroad, we always go back to the world of work. And I hope what I'm showcasing to you is kind of what the working world landscape actually looks like now, and how the world of work has evolved. Because I started working when I was like 15. I didn't kind of get into the throes of my career until after law school. So, and law school was like, oh, when was law school? Well, actually, no, that's not true. Well, actually, yeah, it is, because when I finished law school was in 2010, and although I was working for legal companies before 2010, I didn't really go I didn't go full. I can't speak. I didn't fully go into my career until after law school, because I had to kind of almost legitimize my experience through my academics in that way. But what I will say, and what is very abundantly clear to me, is how a lot of organizations use middle management as the fall guy. Let's be real, So it's definitely a conversation I feel like we should continue having. And I'd love to hear from you all about your views on middle management. Are you part of middle management? Are you siloed off and are affected by multi-layered middle management? How does that affect your delivery of work? And how are you then planning to move forward in terms of mobility, knowing that you have those obstructive kind of bureaucratic structures of a multi-layered middle managers? So I'd love to hear from you about that. And hopefully you found this segment really interesting, because I think it's very interesting, honey. Just staying on the whole work-related theme and middle managers, I did some research about soft skills and how soft skills are on the rise as being fundamental to your long-lasting career success, irrespective of the industry or the role you have. And what it says about soft skills is your ability to collaborate with others, your ability to forge those strategic relationships, your ability to develop adaptability, and all these things, plus other soft skills, are true drivers for a long-term career success. And what I found interesting about that is actually considering what soft skills are. Now, soft skills are the things I have mentioned, but I remember many years ago working for a particular telco company and being told by my manager that I don't have enough soft skills. Now, when you say soft skills to a Black woman, we have to remember that is loaded with a lot of prejudice, a lot of assumptions, and a lot of stereotypes. So, for example, I was told that part of soft skills is interacting with others. So, greeting people in the morning, being warm and welcoming. I'm not a morning person. I can greet you and say good morning, but I'm not trying to have one big fuck off conversation with you. Okay. So I feel like there has to be a line between, from where I come from culturally as well, it is accepted everyone's different. And I grew up in a family whereby, most of us were not. I don't even think anyone apart from my dad was a morning person. So it just took us a bit longer to wake up. So obviously I would take that into the world of work, and I still do it now. And I'm very vocal about it. I'm not a morning person. I still attend my meetings. I still show up. I still interact. I still collaborate and do all the required soft skills, in the morning, whether I'm a morning person or not. But I'm not going to be a puppet for your micro and macro aggressions. And it's a shame because I was very, I feel like in my 20s, especially my earlier 20s, when I was still figuring out life, I think I was heavily influenced by just wanting to be accepted and wanting to people please. So when I was told by my manager back then about lacking the required soft skills for my role, I had to ask her, if that's how you feel, why did you hire me? Because I would think that if soft skills are so imperative to my job, that would have been part of your assessment criteria before you hired me. And she goes, but Toya, even you asking me that and you challenging me, that's part of the soft skills that I'm saying, that sometimes you just have to kind of like put up and like, I'm not telling you to shut up, but I am saying that sometimes you just have to be uncomfortable. And I said, well, I don't understand. So what you're basically saying to me is part of soft skills is being uncomfortable and just dealing with it. And she never responded. And I was really happy I asked her that question, but I still walked away very confused because it was very innocent for me to question it. I didn't understand how micro macro aggressions work in the stereotype. Looking back now, I can definitely say, listen, well, we all understand soft skills and we all understand stakeholder management, internal, external, being able to be personable and interact and navigate the world of work. We understand. Now, what we may not be able to do is navigate correctly, but those things come through experience and also over time and learning from others. The basic fundamental requirements of soft skills, when you're being told you don't have them, especially as a Black woman, it's actually quite insulting because you want us to perform. And a lot of us are masking at work. Let's be real. A lot of us are, because I'm being really honest with you. I mask a lot at work. I do. And I think that that shows developed soft skills because masking protects me. And equally, I think masking has become part of my identity at work because you know that at work, to an extent, you have to create your personality. Because if you were to really show up as yourself, you would not be accepted. And I'm not trying to be accepted at work. I'm trying to deliver my job. But I think it's very telling that there is now kind of a push for soft skills. But we then need to define what soft skills are. So if you are in an interview, a meeting, or somebody has pulled you up on soft skills, I think it's really important to get a definition of what they understand as soft skills to be. Because I believe that there's a different requirement for soft skills for Black women than there is any other race. And I'm speaking from the perspective of a Black woman. So if you are not Black, I'd be interested to understand your experience there. But I'm telling you, as a Black woman, what my experiences are. And part of my experiences is receiving microaggression through the alleged not having soft skills. And the type of soft skills that I feel is required from Black women is to pander to the fragility of those who are asking us about our soft skills. We clearly have them because we're navigating the world and we're existing in a world that tells us we're not good enough. But I think it's loaded with racial undertones to tell a Black woman that she lacks soft skills or to pull her up on soft skills because we're not actually afforded softness. Because if we want to look at it from that perspective, you're expecting soft skills from somebody who you do not afford softness to. So how are you going to receive those soft skills that you are seeking? We give you what we have the capacity to give you. We are not performing for you. This is not a stage show. We are not participating in your racial undertones dressed up in constructive criticism. But what we are here to do is actually redefine what soft skills are. I want to understand. So to make sure that we are on the same page, it's definitely TikTok worthy, this conversation, because I definitely feel like, for example, I was told, obviously, I think I've shared this before about my face not fitting. And now I look back and I think a lot of that is to do with not kind of being palatable to this senior member of staff because I wasn't smiling and I wasn't a morning person. He was like the Energizer Bunny. I now suspect, was he on drugs? Because to be bouncing off the walls that hard early in the morning, I'm talking about 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, when sometimes we had to come in or join calls really early because of time differences, or when it's like 8 o'clock in the morning and people are looking for coffee, you're expecting me to bounce off the walls with you and smile like a flipping fool looking like a raccoon. I don't know how that works, motherfucker. Sorry. But I think it's a conversation worthy topic, and I definitely think from when your group chats, I'd love to know, or at least for you to share with me what we discussing in terms of these soft skills, especially with this this resurfacing of the importance of soft skills. And don't get me wrong, I put a level of importance on soft skills if we have a shared definition of what soft skills are, and it's not loaded with racial undertones and stereotypes targeted towards Black women. Motherhood costs women opportunities and pay. I want to talk about maternal bias. There's an article I read recently where they did some research, and it shows that maternal bias is the strongest type of gender bias. When hiring managers know a woman has children because parent-teacher association coordinator appears on your resume or your CV. So she is the person who is suffering from this maternal bias, according to this research study, is 79% less likely to be hired. And if she were hired, she would be offered an average of $11,000 less in salary. So this study was conducted within the US, but I've always told you what usually happens in the US finds its way to the UK and vice versa. So motherhood should never be a career penalty, but research shows it often is. Women with children are less likely to be hired and are offered lower pay than their peers, while fathers don't face the same scrutiny. It's time we stopped asking if mothers are committed and started recognizing their talent. I'm going to share something with you. Something that I've always enjoyed is kind of climbing the ladder through my career, especially when I knew that I could climb it through being a consultant. I cut at least 10 years off kind of climbing the career ladder through contracting, if I'm being completely honest. And that's just because I've been on some massive projects. I've worked for some of the most amazing companies, and my CV reads to that effect. So I've had the opportunity to really explore my career from different perspectives. And in doing so, something I was really clear on is not being typecast in any one industry, especially when I was still trying to figure out kind of what I wanted to do, what I enjoyed. So for me, I got experience in the public, private, third sector and the charity sector. And I've worked on some massive domestic projects and international projects. And I have been very blessed to have had those opportunities. I prioritized my career because back then, as a single woman, what else would I be doing other than prioritizing my career in education? And I wouldn't say I necessarily followed the conventional path, because the conventional path for me from an academic standpoint was to be a lawyer. And I've shared this before, but I was 6 months away from being a fully qualified lawyer. And I told my dad, this is just not for me. I was on a really massive criminal case and it was all over the media. And just to see how the justice system operated, I just could not in good faith continue. And people say, well, why don't you do another aspect of law? Well, I currently am really from commercial contract management and little dabs of procurement. But the point is, at that time, I was just very good at criminal law and family and housing law. Those were kind of like my majors, right? And my dad said, listen, you have your academics and you've done everything you need to do. Go out into the world and just figure it out, And I thank my dad so much for just being so supportive, because for him, once you've got your academics, you could do anything you want to do, but you must get your academics. That was his view. And I agree with him to an extent, because I think that it's given me access into certain things and industries whereby my peers don't necessarily have the same academics and qualifications as I do. But you take my qualifications and add my experience, and honey, it is a lot. But I say all of this to say that I have noticed a shift since becoming a mother. it's not something I lead with. So a lot of you who listen to the podcast or have followed my journey know that as I was a contractor and I was pregnant, I was holding down 2 assignments, and neither of my clients knew I was pregnant. And obviously we're all working remote, and I really leveraged and enjoyed the ability to work remote and create my personality around the role that I was delivering without actually having to share something so private and so personal. Partly because I didn't want the judgment and the stereotype. And number 2, I didn't want them to use it as a crux for me. And what you tend to find is you're working in industries where they have their own stereotype and they put it on you, but that's not kind of the stereotype you're operating in. Do you know what I mean? And equally as well, I think I just have never felt safe as a Black woman in any organisation. So why would I share something so personal that would make me so vulnerable? But since becoming a mum, I obviously decide when I came off maternity, I continued consulting until a perm role opportunity came around, and I had a very high expectation in order for me to consider to go perm, but in accordance to kind of what my family needed and my daughter being able to acclimatize to whatever routines that we were doing, I felt perm gave us as a family the structure for me to kind of like re-enter into my career, if you like, post consulting. And I definitely think it's been positive in terms of kind of how I see the world of work, reframing things that I see. But from a motherhood career perspective, I'm going to sit here and say to you that there is an episode coming, because I have so much to share, and I feel like a lot of you are reading between the lines, especially those of you who have followed the podcast for a really long time. I've been very honest and open and frank that, you know, I definitely feel that my growth has been deliberately stagnated. And I think a lot of that is because I'm a mum. So the assumption is she can't work late, she can't work too early. Oh my God, she's got loads of responsibilities, so we can't give her this piece of work in order to elevate her and continue to expose her to other, opportunities, because as a mother, she's held back. Effectively, that's what it is. And I feel like a lot of people use their stereotypes, but it's not true. Okay, fine. You know, I can't go to every work event and come home at midnight, partly because I don't fucking want to. And secondly, I have a home that I actually like. I'm not trying to stay out all night. I don't give a shit about stuff like that. Now, is there a balance between kind of socializing and collaborating outside of hours and work? Yes. But for me, respect first. You can't see me on them streets, honey. I do not reside in the streets. I can very much plan my day around my daughter. I'm very blessed that she goes to a really good private nursery, and it opens from 7:30 till 6 p.m. My daughter never does that whole day. Like, she usually gets dropped around 8, picked up around 5, 5:15. And she's been in nursery since she was about 6 months old. I have no regrets about it, because there were a couple of things that were really important. And one of them was my career. Secondly was sleep. So my daughter was sleep trained from 6 months. And thirdly, I think it's important for my daughter to see me work equally as her dad does, because I want my daughter to understand that, you know, there requires ambition, and that ambition has to also is collective with her dad. But I have my solo ambitions that I do. And in as much as being my daughter's mum, I wear other hats too. And I need my daughter to see that and to know it. And I'm really proud of my career, actually, and what I've been able to do. But I definitely feel in my current position, I'm not being given opportunities. And there is going to be an episode where I cover everything. I'm just not in a position to discuss it now, because things are happening. Because what I'm never going to allow you to do is prevent my growth, especially when I've invested so much time, effort, and money to get to where I am. And if I didn't have the good sense at the time of my career to understand the need for me to contract and consult and work for different organizations, I'd be stuck in a role for how many years? Not going up, not going down, but staying at the level in which they want me to, because it suits them. But equally, I am starting to resent a few things that I've witnessed. And this is why team meetings are really important. You need to fucking pay attention to what's happening. A lot of things that are happening to you is because you're not seeing what's happening around you. You need to listen more than you speak. Some of you talk way too much. Sometimes it's not what people tell you, it's what they say to each other around you. And I learned that very early on in my career. In fact, I learned that when I was in Goldman Sachs. You need to pay attention. Listen to what's going on. We recently had a team meeting. Now, my team is global. So it's whoever is local will come to this team meeting. It was so eye-opening that I realized that there is one single person in the team that's getting all the ancillary work over and above their day-to-day. Not because she's better than me at the job, not because of anything other than the fact that favoritism, pretty privilege. And I don't just say these things lightly. I have evidence for this, okay? And I will share this as time goes on because there is a test in this testimony. And when I give you the testimony, a lot of you will not believe it. Your mouth will drop on the floor and I will help you pick it back up. Because I'm not new to this. I grew to this. The reason why I have this podcast is because I'm teaching you guys what I know and I'm willing to share it. I don't have to. I do it because I know there's a calling upon my life as part of this journey, and how Toy Talks came about tells me that this is the journey I'm supposed to be on, experiencing, listening to what you guys have gone through and sharing it in a safe space. And that's why I've created Toy Talks, the podcast, the platform and the brand. But during this team meeting, there were so many revelations that I watched my boss be uncomfortable as he realized that a lot of us who were paying attention, so out of the 8 of us, probably 2 of us were paying attention, he'd been fucking rumbled. Because up until that point, I think he thought he was pacifying us with excuses. One thing with me is I know an excuse when I see one, but I look for evidence. And one thing you will never be the crux in my career, because I am the architect of my career and I've been building this career since the age of 15. So what we're not going to do is target me with that maternal bias that's rooted in gender bias. Now, as women, we understand, look, listen, not every woman wants to be a parent, and that is fine. Yeah? Not every woman can be a parent, and that is fine. Be it out of choice or just physically, that is fine. Because up until several years ago, I didn't want to be a mum either. And I know for some people it's not about an either, it's just they can't. And I get that. But I'm talking from the perspective of my experience. I didn't want to be a mum for a really long time, partly because of my narcissistic mother and me not thinking and I wanted to do it and being told I'm useless, all of that. Worked through it, gone to therapy, made the decision collectively with my husband to do the work until I got to a point where I was like, okay, I want to do this. And motherhood is fucking hard. There is a lot of sacrifice as part of motherhood. And yes, to a certain degree, I feel as though if you do not have the support system, it's very hard to balance or attempt to balance career and motherhood. But for me, I always said this. I always knew I was going to go back to work early because survival skills and always being in a state of survival and understanding how unhealthy that may be, but that's how I live my life. And I said, in order for me to have the peace of mind, my daughter has to go to one, if not the best nursery in the area. And there were certain things I wanted, and I made sure we had them. So then going into work and post kind of having my daughter, I never lead with, I'm a mum. But you know what I've started to do? I've started to drop it in a conversation if I'm speaking. Now, I'm very selective on those conversations because it's not everyone I share that with. But when you are talking about an opportunity and we're talking about flexibility, part of that flexibility is knowing I'm being employed by an adult. I want to know if you're an adult. Are you able to understand that, yes, I'm a mum first, but my daughter's in nursery full time. And I say this, my daughter's in nursery full time. Her dad's very hands-on. But it's not every conversation I bring my daughter up. I've got to be honest, because I think I have to be very comfortable enough to know that this is not something that you'll use as a weapon to judge me. But I definitely think in conversations I've had about opportunities, there's been 2 recruiters, one of which I know has a child the same age as mine. So we kind of bond on that level. And funny enough, the disclosures I've made are to women, because I feel like, I don't know, not all women understand, but the women that I've shared it with are mothers. So what is understood need not be explained. But I definitely see in my current situation how my motherhood is affecting opportunities that I could have had versus somebody who doesn't have any children, who's being given all this ancillary work and advancing herself. And the only difference between us is literally I'm a mum and she's not. Because when we put skill sets on paper, I blow her out of the wind. She comes to me for stuff. And she actually outwardly said this in the team meeting. She comes to me because I have the experience and the breadth and wealth of experience more so than she does. And while she's very talented and very experienced, she understands who I am in terms of what I do and what I bring to the table. I've worked for big, massive corporations on big projects. These projects are still in like they're still operating today. Like, so I'm not speaking from a space of thinking I should have. It's more, it's experience, right? And as and when I make decisions and moves, if my boss asks me why, he's not really going to like my response. But one thing about me is I don't move with just words. I move with evidence. Whether I'm a perm, whether I'm a contractor, I remain the architect of my career. What is an architect? I design, I create, and I build my career. And I pride myself on the ability to navigate the world of work. But I do also accept that your manager gives you the exposure of opportunities within your current environment. And then you become affected when you're not given those opportunities because they say go out and get them. But you've got to remember there is a gatekeeper often, and that's going to be your manager. And that's the situation I'm in. So you can imagine, like my current organization, I've been there for almost 2 years. 2 years is very significant, by the way, because in 2 years, things need to grow for me. That's how I kind of manage my career. It may be different for different people, but my general kind of rule of thumb is 2 years. We need growth, we need climbing, and we need money. That's what we need. And in that order, preferably at the same time. And I will go as far as to tell you guys, I'm on 6 figures. Like, let's be transparent. And I work hard for those 6 figures. You better believe it. But it didn't just drop on my lap. I've been navigating, I've been sacrificing, I've been building, I've been creating, I've been making it happen. And while 6 figures for some is amazing, believe me, I'm heavily taxed, okay? But the point is, to maintain that, I have to continue to grow. So if I'm not finding that growth and that mobility, I will seek it. And I'm willing to step out to do it. Because I cannot beg you for opportunities that exist that you willfully choose not to give me. And when we talk about this motherhood costing women opportunities and pay, heavy on the opportunities, because the opportunities and pay for me work hand in hand. So yes, I can completely see where a study where a woman is 79% less likely to be hired, because you should never be, personally to me, if you can avoid disclosing that you're a mum at an interview process, you should, as much as possible being the operative words. And being offered on average £11,000 less in salary than our male counterparts or women who do not have children says a lot, because what it basically says is having a child clips your ability to grow and to be exposed to certain opportunities. And whilst, those figures may not relate to my current situation, I'm deeply affected and completely understand how a study could arrive at that conclusion. But I hope that in talking about it here, it creates an opportunity for discussion and conversation. I take into consideration that not every mother is ambitious, and a lack of ambition doesn't denote laziness, by the way. All of us are at different stages of our lives and our career. But I don't just have a career. I run 2 businesses now. Well, Sister Scribble is about to launch. I'm running 2 businesses. I take my career really seriously because it saved my life. It gave me the structure I needed to grow and to build. It gave me the opportunity to focus on something and create that stability for myself, especially at a time when I had nobody and I was emotionally and mentally downtrodden and I felt I was worthless. I found growth, comfort through my career. It gave me a warm hug in progress as I continue to navigate. I'm not ashamed of that. Do I love my job? No. Am I really good at it? Yes. Do I love that I am really good at something that then yields me opportunities and money? Absolutely. I'm not ashamed of it. How many of us are in that situation, and how many of us want to understand how to navigate and pivot and grow and create more opportunities and make more money? Me. So I would love to move on to a dilemma that was sent. Now, I do get quite a lot of dilemmas that come through the mailbox, and some are immediate responses are required because something's happening, and you all know that I hate shit like that. I would rather you give me enough time to be able to help you properly. I'm led by my spirit, and if my energy directs me, I will follow. And there's some people who just require, like, it's not extensive. So I'm able to do it offline and have confirmation from them always that I can share it on the podcast. And one thing is, I will not deal with dilemmas in silo. If you want me to help you with a dilemma, that's fine. You have to trust me when I say your anonymity is protected and I'm able to share it on the podcast, because we need to all learn. It's not just one to learn. We are all here to learn and grow, myself included. So I'm very grateful for all of you who choose to trust me to advise, guide, and help. And let's get into it. So the subject title is Dilemma: Why I'm Considering Leaving My Job. Hi, Toya. Hope you and the baby are doing well. I never thought I would be someone to send a dilemma, but there's a first time for everything. I joined an investment banking company in 2022. Now, she does mention them, and obviously maintaining her anonymity, I'm not sharing it, but she then goes on to say, and have been with the company for the past 3 years, 2 years on the graduate program and 1 year in my current role. And she does give me her current role. When I joined the team in September 2024, I had my doubts, but I gradually began to enjoy the role. There was a promise of progression. The pay was solid at 70k pre-tax. The people were nice and the hours were manageable, typically 9 to 5 with occasional late day. Although I was required to be in office 5 days a week, I found a balance by using the office gym during the day, which made the routine sustainable. However, since May 2025, things have taken a turn. My pay has only marginally increased now to 71,400. So pre-tax 2024, it was 70,000 pre-tax, and now it's increased by 1,400. I've been told I won't be promoted to associate next year. My working hours have become extreme, regularly 8 or 9 a.m. to 10:30 p.m. or even midnight due to picking up the workload of someone leaving. I'm still required to be in the office 5 days a week, and some people have a choice of the work they will take on, where myself and others don't. Despite raising the need for additional support and participating in the interview process for a replacement, the new hire has been placed on another team's portfolio, leaving me back at square one. Management claims they'll hire 8 people next year, but given they only hired 4 this year, who are still ramping up, I'm skeptical of how effective or timely that support will be. I was diagnosed with inattentive ADHD last year, just before my 24th birthday. I'm now 25, and the current situation is becoming mentally, physically, and emotionally draining. I rarely see or have the energy to talk to my friends, family, or partner. I've stopped going to the gym. I used to go 3 times a week. I'm losing my appetite, and I have started making mistakes at work, likely a result of both my ADHD and pure exhaustion. I also struggle to sleep because I can't stop thinking about work. On top of this, I've started a side hustle, Airbnb, which has helped me realize that I need a different kind of work setup, something with more flexibility, even just one day or remote work, better hours, and possibly less client facing pressure. A location change could also help. Right now, I feel like a bit stuck on a roller coaster that I need to get off, not just for my career growth, but for my well being. I think I already know the answer to this dilemma, but it would be good to get an unbiased opinion about my current situation too. Kind regards. Right, I do want, before I go into detail and hopefully provide a response, I did some research on inattentive ADHD. And it's a form of attention deficit or hyperactivity disorder categorized by a consistent pattern of difficulty with focus, organization, and follow through, without the significant hyperactivity and impulsivity seen in other presentations of ADHD. So the symptoms include making careless mistakes, trouble sustaining attention, forgetfulness in daily activities, and poor organization, and frequently losing items. Damn, that sounds like me. But I wanted to understand it because I have ADHD, high functioning, but obviously there's a subset to my ADHD, which I'm getting assessed for. And I have traits of autism, and I've never actually shared that before in the podcast, but I am going to share it because vulnerability, and I welcome those to share and be vulnerable, bearing in mind how ADHD shows up differently in women than it does men, whilst there is obviously consistency amongst certain subsects of neurodiversity, specifically ADHD. So there is a couple of things here, and I'm going to take them step by step. Stagnation is a problem for growth. If you're stagnant, you're not growing. And it's funny because if you listen to this episode and then listen to this dilemma, I think I've kind of answered it in part. Every 2 years, you need to be growing in opportunities or in money, or both, preferably both. And if you don't have that, you're stagnant. Simple, it's really easy, quick maths. Your role has become untenable. Not because of the lack of financial growth, not because they told you you're not going to make associate, and not because it's 5 days a week, but because you don't have any balance whatsoever. And as a result of exhaustion and also in part your ADHD, you're making mistakes, which means your situation is setting you up to fail. So you can expect amongst everything you're doing, the mistakes are what is going to be highlighted. And that is a fast track way for you to be out the door on their terms. I think something that's really amazing, and I find especially with women, irrespective of colour, I'm speaking to women in general here, is a lot of women, especially the ones I have in my life or interact with, is we're really ambitious, and that ambition doesn't begin and end at your career. It's things that you do ancillary to that. So in your case, Airbnb. And I can understand why it is exciting and it creates other opportunities, albeit different from your current role, but something for yourself and something that is different for you to focus on. I think what's really sad here is amongst all the sacrifice, because let's be honest, yes, you're being paid, but there is sacrifice that's happening here, because if your role in your contract says 9 to 5 and you're doing over and above that, there is a sacrifice of time. But more than that is you're sacrificing time with your family, your time with your partner, and you're becoming so tired that even basic interactions are becoming difficult. I think you know what I'm going to say here. But before I say it, I'm going to say this. I think it's really important as women, especially as Black women, especially in perm roles, that we start considering making neurodiversity disclosures rather than us masking. Because I think it's becoming very apparent that masking is not actually helping us. It really is not. I think we need to get to a point whereby we understand how our neurodiversity affects how we deliver our roles. And we make these disclosures not only to inform, but also as a form of protection. And it needs to be a formal disclosure. Hey, HR, CC, HR business partner, line manager. I think it's really important that as I continue my career here and my growth, that I make a disclosure of neurodiversity, specifically inattentive ADHD. This does affect the way I deliver my role, and it affects me as an individual. But as you can see, it hasn't affected the way I show up. However, I think a conversation now needs to be had about the support that will be afforded to me as a result of this disclosure, and how occupational help will be provided, and what they will do to support me in the growth and delivery of my role. Full stop, no long thing there. And then you need to obtain the policy around disclosures, neurodiversity, diversity in the workplace, and kind of what an organisation does to support you, because you are a protected class. Now, I think it's really important that in making that disclosure, there's a couple of things that happen in parallel. I think you do need to look at another opportunity. And I say this because your industry and what you do does not need to be in the office 5 days a week. Now, taking the organisation you work in, and although I haven't disclosed it on the podcast, I understand you are top tier 1. I get all of that. But there are other organisations on par with what you do that may require increased hours. But I think what I'm seeing here from you is, if you had more balance, it would be less of an issue. And I now can glean from your dilemma that this is affecting your mental health. You're unable to go to the gym, you're unable to sleep, you're not eating, you're losing your appetite. No job is worth that. None. So if I was to advise you, I would say you need to be signed off from the doctor for at least 2 weeks, because you need to recollaborate. And as you're getting signed off, I also think that that's when you make the disclosure, and then you're clear why you have had to be signed off because of XYZ. And whilst you have discussed getting support, there is now a direct impact in your health because you're unable to sleep. I think you need to be that honest, because it's the truth, and you mark it private and confidential. And then I think you need to look at other opportunities, because you're doing all this stuff over and above, bending over backwards, sideways, forward ways, down the low, and for a £1,400 increase in almost 2 years. That's crazy talk. For what you do, that's not acceptable. But what happens is you get into a pattern of accepting this to your detriment. But unless there is balance, this imbalance will continue to affect you. And let me just be very clear. If you have a nervous breakdown, you will be replaced. So it's better that you do the replacing. So yes, you already know the answer, but it's important for you to get an independent perspective and an unbiased one. And I agree. And whilst I know when you said that you didn't think you'd be writing in a dilemma, girl, we're all going through it. We're all on this roller coaster called life, and we're all doing that career travel. And this is a safe space for you. So, number one, I think you need to consider making a neurodiversity disclosure in writing, formalize everything in writing. Number two, I think you need to obtain the policies that surround that to see what help and support, or to see kind of what you would need to do. I think that you need to look at other opportunities. And I think that as part of that disclosure, it's important for you to say also, once they come back to you and there is a dialogue, I think that you need to say what you would need to be able to do your job. And I'm going to say this. I shared this in my last episode, and I think you should go back and listen to it. I went on a course that kind of dealt with this. And effectively, Occ Health can recommend that you work 2 days a week from home, 3 days, whatever it is that you require. We don't know this because we don't know this information. This is where you're going to get the information on this podcast. So you can get things like that from Occ Health, or even recommendations from your doctor. And it will have to be considered and accepted by your employer, because you are protected under the Disability Act as well. Because neurodiversity falls into that. These are the things I mean when I say you're a protected class once you make that disclosure, and you have to utilize it for your benefit, because maybe you will leave, but you're not ready to leave now. So how do you make your current situation comfortable enough for you until you're ready to make that move out. And when you do decide to leave, I would say you make a decision if you want to make that disclosure, but any disclosure is for private and confidential with your current company. But I've always said, and I've said it to everybody, I never make the disclosure that I have any neurodiversity or disabilities, because I'm also dyslexic. This is the first role I've been in where I have made that disclosure, but I've been there for almost 2 years. And again, that's a podcast episode all on its own, because I will be explaining, because I'm taking notes. And then, yeah, like I said, I think you also need to look at other opportunities that provide you that flexibility. Ask some very pointed questions during interview. You don't go to an interview and say, I want flexibility, but even asking, what does flexibility mean to you, and how is flexibility incorporated into my role to support me to deliver my role to the best of my ability? Those are questions you need to ask. I've shared a lot of organisations are moving towards an office presence. From 3 days, it will go to 5 days. My organisation are mandating 5 days a week, of which I am exempt. Number one, because of the type of role I do, because my role to an extent is client facing and my client is not in the UK. And secondly, if I live more than 50 miles away from my base office, I'm exempt, and I definitely live more than 50 miles away. So I'm very grateful for that. And I'm going to be really honest, I couldn't work to my optimal level for an organisation working 5 days a week. That time is over. So how you are doing this, I do not know, especially with the hours and the sacrifice that you're making. I just really feel for you, because I can imagine your exhaustion, which would then trigger certain aspects of your ADHD. And being ADHD myself, I get it. But I think you need to act now. So first and foremost, I think you need to get signed off. Secondly, in parallel, make a disclosure in writing. And I'm quite happy to support you to do that, whatever you require. But I've also provided you some wording as part of my response to your dilemma. I then think you need to take a break in between. So if you do end up going for interviews and getting a role, you need to take time out. And I was actually speaking to someone today and I said, listen, I always say you should take time off in between roles. So my notice period is supposed to be 3 months. I've seen in my contract it's less than that. But I would tell any prospective employer it's 3 months, because I would probably end up having to give 3 months, number one. But number two, I will take some time out for myself, even if it's a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I will be doing that because my mental health comes first. I do need to check that, actually. My employment contract says 4 weeks. I'm just saying for the future, if I was to leave, it says 4 weeks. But actually, as my role has changed, I wonder if that's something ancillary that they have slipped into my contract through addendum that I don't know. So I'll have to check that. I can't trust nobody. Everyone's a slippery character. But yeah, that's my advice. And I don't think any of that will be a surprise to you, but maybe the bit about disclosure and things like that might be. So please feel free to follow up with an email. Keep us updated with what's happened. And if you want me to provide any added support through kind of coaching you through it, I'm quite happy to do it. More so because I understand, I know, I get it. And I've advised people on similar situations, but more importantly, it's about giving you the respite to make informed decisions. And you can only have that with a rested mind. Being in a role that is so demanding that you make so much sacrifice of your time and not sleeping is a recipe for disaster. And I've been there and it doesn't end well. So please prioritize yourself. Find the time to prioritize yourself as much as possible and put your foot down. This is the time now to advocate for yourself and to cover yourself. You are not beans. Honey, you're working for a massive organization and I'm sure your CV speaks for itself. So it's about how you leverage that to get what you need, and what you need is flexibility, and it's within your reach. So I am going to draw today's episode to a close. And hopefully you've really enjoyed it as much as I've enjoyed delivering it. There is a topic I wanted to cover here about jealousy. And there was a post that I posted and it has got a lot of feedback in the DMs. And it's about kind of elevating and growing and kind of doing the hardships in life, and now you're enjoying the fruits of your labor, and actually the people that are supposed to be going on the journey with you are just jealous. And rather than call it out as jealous, one asks or questions whether it's you, or whether you're overthinking it, or whether you're just leaning into this narrative of jealousy and it's not really jealousy, and we need to call it what it is. I do want to explore it more. in another episode, because I think it deserves an episode on its own, because I've got many examples to bring, and periodically through the episodes I do talk about this, but maybe I haven't kind of like really gone into detail. So it's definitely something I'm going to take into next week's episode and have a very interestingly informed conversation about that and what it looks like. Because the truth is, when you are going through the hardships, no one is bringing forth their jealousy. When you are enjoying the fruits of your labor and heavy on the labor, that's when you see the true colors of people. Those who will celebrate you, or those that will choose to be jealous and are unwilling and unrelenting in trying to rob you of your joy. So what we're here to say is, this is a joy that cannot be robbed. And sometimes meeting somebody where they are and telling them, you are a jealous bitch, get out. And sometimes it's no contact. Sometimes it's cutting them off. Sometimes their jealousy is so overwhelming to them, they'll cut you off. Don't look for closure. Don't look for an explanation. Sometimes just open your eyes to what the universe is telling you. And that leads me to a quote that I saw recently that said, don't chase closure in people who ran from accountability. But we'll explore that topic in another episode, preferably next week, where I'll go into a bit more detail. And also I'm going to see if there's any Harvard studies, because I think there's a clinical disorder to do with jealousy, of those who exhibit jealousy from people who have suffered and enjoying the fruits of their labor, and people who are uncomfortable with other people's successes because of where they are in life. We need to talk about that. It deserves its own episode. I'm sure all of us can bring forth examples of where we have been in that situation, where people are exhibiting this negative, very toxic, very evil trait towards us, and adopting this negative personality because they are angry at your success. But when you were suffering and struggling, they were smiling. That's what we call in my language okwensu, which means the devil, evil. Please stay abreast of kind of the things I am posting on social media. The Toya Talks podcast, social media is Toya_talks. My personal Instagram page is Toya_Washington. It is private, my personal Instagram page. So if your energy is correct and my spirit reads you right, I may accept. I'm also on TikTok, Toya_Washington, or Toya_talks. And yeah, I'm on social media. Before I close, I do want to say this. I often get asked why I don't take certain opportunities, and I get lots of them. I don't know how I get onto all these PR lists. I'm on them. Sometimes they share stories with me that is embargoed until a certain date. I'm allowed to talk about it. I get asked about whether I want to interview certain people. And for me, you all know, like, if it's not aligned to the ethos of what we are creating here and what we have created here on Toya Talks, I'm not going to do it. I'll say no more than I say yes. And if I say yes and I bring someone on the show, just understand, I say show, is it a show? It's a podcast. Just know that this person has something for us to learn and grow from and with. And I'll only ever bring substance. I am very careful about the energy that is around me. So you can imagine the energy that I'm definitely going to protect around the brand and around the podcast. And I remember a couple of years ago, I got a dilemma, and somebody had said in their dilemma that they're following me on Instagram, but they're shocked that I don't have a lot of Instagram followers. And when I first read that, in the moment, I was in my feelings, because I was like, it doesn't denote popularity, because my downloads and my analytics speak for itself. But it did make me feel like, hang on a minute, am I missing something here? There are so many podcast episodes that have come since Toya Talks that speak on similar topics, and I've always said I think there's room for everyone, but they've fallen off. And we've been going on now for slightly over 5 years now, and I'm really proud of the community I've built. I'm really proud of the podcast in terms of the conversations that it's sparking, the visibility that it gets. And believe me, my mailbox tells me the visibility that it gets, not just the podcast, but even my TikToks where I talk about work-related things. I've gone viral a couple of times on there, and it's brought forth opportunities which I have turned down because they don't align with my personal ethics or align with the podcast. And I'm going to be the first person, if not the first person, but I'm sure you've heard it in other spaces, but I will always be the first person to tell you, if you stay focused on your journey and you don't allow the distractions of other people's opinions and the weight of what people assume where you should be, and you're focused on your trajectory, you approach it with clean hands and you've got a clean heart, I promise you, doors will open, opportunities will flow, and you will continue to grow. Because I'm a living testimony of that. I am so proud of the fact that I get to build my brand and develop the podcast on my own terms. I'm not shackled to management or a brand that are trying to control me. And I will always be the person that is a free spirit and is an independent thinker. And with that comes the freedom to be able to create. So yeah, maybe I don't have as many followers as you would expect on social media, but my downloads and my numbers speak for itself. The women's lives that have been transformed from this podcast, the advice and the coaching I've been able to give through the podcast, and the living testimonies that I receive from people tells me that not only am I on the path that I'm supposed to be on, that I'm doing what I have been destined to do and what has been ordained to do in my life. And I'm very proud of everything I've achieved, both personally and from a business perspective, and everything that I've achieved here on the podcast and continue to do. Because it's not beans to self-produce, to edit, to create and deliver a podcast. It's not. And I know that I'm able to do it because this is the path that has been chosen for me, and I am fully in it, and I'm very proud. I'm not here to sell dreams and fantasy. I'm here to give the reality. I'm here to teach, guide, and educate women how to navigate the world of work and highlight the path of our success. This is the Toy Talks podcast, and I am proud of everything we're doing here. So I just wanted to say that because I give gratitude to the universe, and I'm so grateful for all the opportunities, all the listeners, all the downloads, all the group chats, all the DMs. I read them. I reply as much as possible. All your ratings as well on social media platforms. I'm just so grateful, and I'm so grateful to the audience that we have here. So thank you. I think it's always important to show gratitude to the universe and to the journey. So yeah. Anyway, my name is Toy Washington. You've been listening to the Toy Talks podcast, and I am back next week. So make sure you have a great week. Look after yourselves and each other.
TOI, let me show you how to navigate and elevate. That's what we do. Black queen, energy growing, no fantasy, just real talk. From classroom dreams to boardroom walk. Black woman power, watch it shine. Breaking barriers, redesigning time. From Tottenham Roads to CEO, every step teaching what we know. Not just surviving, but thriving more. Opening every closed door. Toya Talks. Toya Talks. Toya Talks. Black queens to the top, and we're still going.